Cora, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Okay. Cora, I was going to ask you, so the YLC stuff, I was just going to mention it during my updates for the speed mentoring event, but did you want to talk about it?
I
can show you what I put on the slide for it. Like, it's nothing big, so either way is fine, but whatever you think makes sense.
Well, did you have a separate slide about speed mentoring in general?
No, so I'll show you the slide I have. Hang on one sec. Just let me. Yeah, so this was the slide I had for overall updates, if you can see that. So it was like part of the overall update slide, and I was just going to talk about that.
Yeah, that works.
Do you want to mention the speed mentoring event and say anything, or
during the slide, you mean?
Yeah. Because then after that, I was going to lead in, because then it next goes into your slides right after this.
Oh,
so,
okay.
The presentation ends. Oh, why did you do that? That's weird. But yeah, so like, hold on, sorry. I'm just making sure all of this looks right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it goes to that slide, and then so I can pass it over to you to talk about that, and then it goes, it's not moving forward. It goes straight into your slides after that.
Okay. I mean, I can mention then the event if it goes right into like my summary slides.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then I have a few more NYC service update stuff after that as well, so you can pass it back to me.
Okay, that sounds good.
Cool.
Hello.
Hi, Amita.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I sent you a slightly tweaked version of my slides. Did you see that?
Yeah, I just got it and I'm putting it in here. It looks like, I think most of them are fine. It looks like there were a few things where I don't have that font downloaded, so the formatting looks a
got
little
it.
funny. So I'm just trying to fix them. Most of them look fine, but like it's a little bit different looking than what
I sent you
had on them. The other thing I can do though is, and this might make more sense because I was going to do it straight from the PDF you had sent yesterday, but I'll just change this PowerPoint so that I don't have to copy and paste it into here, because then it'll show up exactly. And anyway, there's sort of like a gap because Laura's presenting you. So I was going to turn off the screen sharing. And so I'll start it again once you start and just go into the other presentation.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, Cora. I don't think we've met before.
Hi, no, I don't think we have either. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, this is Cora. She's our AmeriCorps Vista member, working on in-kind and mentoring engagement for a little bit longer. Her last day is actually at the end of July, or beginning of August, end of July. So,
right. I feel like
I know.
Well, nice to meet you. Glad that we get, a little bit of time.
For sure. I know, like Shilpa said, time has been flying by. I can't believe it's already midway of July.
I know. Gosh, that's really scary.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I know I have a lot of text on the slides, and I'll acknowledge that, I like to do that because I just find that when people get the presentation after, it's just helpful to have a lot of information, but obviously I'm not going to go through every single thing that's on there. But Shilpa, I just wanted to confirm that we'll be sharing the PDF afterwards, right? With the group?
Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. Great. You guys can hear me okay and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, I'm just scrolling through. I know, I'm glad we'll have the opportunity for participation at the end, but until then, it'll be a lot of just going through information. But I'll reassure people that they'll have a chance to participate and chat.
I will let people in just a sec. I'm just cleaning up some stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just trust that depending on how many people are actually on the line, that, you'll just figure out how many for each breakout when we send people out.
Just let me know, I guess. So you're thinking like 4 people per group or 5 people per group?
Yeah. I think if it ends up like we have a lot more people, we just don't want to have 10 report outs because we won't have that much time. So I would say let's aim for 4 or 5 groups. So we, that's how many kind of quick report outs we have, but shuffle based on, how many people we have. But I would say a max of 4 or 5 groups would be great.
Okay, great. I'm going to start letting people in then.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll just give it a few more minutes for folks who join, and we'll be starting shortly. Hey, I think we'll get started and then hopefully folks will join us soon because I know we're missing a few names still, but that's okay. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Shilpa Jackman. I'm Director of Public-Private Partnerships at NYC Service. This is our Corporate Volunteer Council meeting for July. I see a few new folks joining, so welcome. If you don't know, it's our quarterly gathering of business partners where we share information about city priorities and best practices in employee volunteer engagement. Just a few housekeeping things. If you could please stay on mute unless you're the designated speaker, that would be great. We will have a Q&A session at the end and some discussion, but feel free in the meantime, if you have any questions, to submit them via the chat feature. We'll be taking a look at that and making sure that we're posing any questions. If you're speaking, also it's helpful if you could identify yourself by your name, your role, and your company. And just a few other notes, we'll be recording this session and that recording, as well as this deck and a few other links, will be shared with everyone following the meeting. So with that, we have a pretty packed agenda today, which is very exciting. We'll be hearing from our Chief Service Officer and then introducing Amita Nagaraja, who's going to be speaking a little bit more about our Guide to Impact updates, that's specifically providing more information to maximize the impact that your employee volunteer engagement programs can have on communities by really developing collaborative partnerships. So Amita has been working with NYC Service on this over the past year, and we're very excited to give you all a sneak peek of what that work has looked like. And then we'll give some NYC Service updates and some CAA updates and our usual wrap up. So with that, I'd like to introduce Laura, who was officially appointed New York City's Chief Service Officer a few weeks ago. And she'll talk a little bit more about our office's overall strategy and priorities as we're wrapping up this administration, moving to the next, and introduced our guest speaker. So.
Great, thank you so much, Shilpa, and hi everybody. I think I've met many of you over the years. I think even though this is a fairly new role for me, I've actually been with NYC Service for the last 6 years. So, you know, I'm really thrilled that the position moved to permanent and to continue working with NYC Service and our staff and Shilpa. I think I'm incredibly excited for the work that we've been doing with Amita. I think so much of this, you know, is just really, I think, a lot of the ways that we're looking at our direction and that we have been over the last, especially year and a half. And so first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. I know this can be a really hard time of year, you know, with planning for the upcoming fall priorities, vacations, a million other things. So we really appreciate that you're here with us today. And we're also very excited to talk about our vision for corporate community partnerships and what we're doing and what we're working on to support all of you in the coming year. So as a whole, NYC Service's work really centers on centering volunteerism and service to empower support to communities. And a big piece of this that we talk about a lot is recognizing that communities already possess the abilities to solve most of their pressing issues. So for us, it's helping provide support, capacity, and different elements to really amplify and magnify what's going on in communities and help them think a little bit more strategically about it. So as a part of this, we really recognize that everyone has something to bring to a table and also recognize everyone's values in the communities that we're working with. Our partnerships with businesses have been so integral to NYC Service's work from the beginning, and our business partners really have such tremendous resources to bring to the table. And we've always been very appreciative of how eager you all are to help in recognizing and honoring that. So throughout the year, all of our different campaigns that we do around Project Move-In Day that we just completed, around Secret Snowflake, the volunteer efforts that you're doing with your employees, they're really just key and critical to the parts of, to really contributing to New York City. And so, you know, and as we recognize and honor that, we also are looking very much at how we frame volunteering at its core as an equity issue. And this is really how we're looking across the board at all of our work, from youth to nonprofits to business partners. And the thing that we really want to do is that with volunteering and service, it often gets labeled as something good and something nice, but that it really, how do we frame it as a systemic piece that really supports communities and situates itself in anti-racism and you know, different approaches. So we really are looking at how do we kind of push against the traditionally, you know, understood ideas of it's a way to help, and you know, how we're paying attention to how service can reproduce inequities. So as we're emerging as a city into recovery after the pandemic, we're striving to do better by creating authentic partnerships to work in collaboration with communities instead of just on their behalf. So, and really we're looking at how important it is for all of our work to be intentional in recognizing the assets that exist in communities and helping to build out on with those with supports. So this is where I think the work Amita's been doing with us today really starts to fit in. And I think, you know, our focus has really shifted into deepening understanding of community needs. So I'm very excited for you to hear from Amita. She's been working with us to update what was known previously as our Guide to Impact. So we're in the final stages of it. We're excited to share it with you, get some feedback from all of you today on it. And the idea of this is that it's really providing strategies and ideas on how to foster partnerships that honor local communities and the organizations that we're all working with. So it allows the public-private partnerships team on our end, you know, with this updated guide to work with the business community to foster authentic connections with local partners. So, you know, and really understanding that while the different forms of engagement can be complex and require a new vision, they're also key parts of ensuring that the wealth of resources New York City businesses can offer will make a great impact on the communities, and especially in the communities where the need is most critical. So, so really this is, you know, aiming for all of us to work on systemic change, transform the way we see public-private partnerships, and especially are providing resources for community support. So with that, I'm excited to turn it over to Amita to give an overview of the guide, share the work and what we've been doing the last few months. And we're really excited to get all of your thoughts as we finalize it. And as I said, very much encourage your feedback. So, and, you know, and in addition, I'm really looking forward to working with all of you further and just seeing this evolve in the coming weeks and months. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Amita.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you all this morning. I'm Amita Nagaraja. And I just want to thank Laura and Shilpa for having me here with all of you today. It's been really exciting to work with them on this project. So just a little bit about me. My background, you know, I used to sit where a lot of you sit. I spent, you know, close to 20 years or so in financial services in New York City, in a few different companies, working for corporate responsibility teams and foundations. Most recently at the JP Morgan Chase Foundation, but before that with a couple of other financial services companies. And for the past 5 years, I have been doing consulting sort of across sectors. So still have a foot in the corporate space and working with CSR teams and corporate foundations, but also working really closely with public sector, the city, as well as nonprofits around strategy and program design and, you know, a number of other sort of areas. So this is really, really exciting work for me because I feel like it really brings together, you know, sort of, you know, it's a true sort of multi-sector, you know, initiative. And, you know, it's really exciting to sort of figure out the connections across, you know, across sectors and how together, you know, we can really maximize sort of that impact. So, you know, one of the things, Laura, I'm not sure that you mentioned this or not, but I'll just mention that, you know, one of the things that I think is very exciting about this guide is that in parallel to this, we're also working on a companion guide that faces nonprofits. So a lot of the things that, you know, concepts that we're putting in here and, you know, ideas that we're encouraging sort of businesses and corporations to really sort of surface, you know, as they're working, you know, with the community and to really keep the focus on the community. You know, on the other side, there's also a guide tailored towards, you know, communities and nonprofits and neighborhoods to help guide them, you know, to sort of ask for what they need and, you know, be really, you know, thoughtful partners from their side also. So, that'll be exciting for all of you to share with potential partners as well. Great. So thank you so much, Shilpa, for helping me with slides here. So this, I think Laura really covered sort of just the purpose of the guide. So we can move forward to this concept of partnerships. I think, a lot of you are probably already engaged in employee volunteerism. And when thinking about how to really maximize impact in our communities through volunteerism, this idea of partnership really bubbled up. It's something that, just cannot be done alone. Sort of the concept of it, it really hinges on bringing together sort of, multiple sort of stakeholders coming together to really be able to make a difference and figuring out, how to partner with our communities to be able to have that impact that we really want to have. One of the things that was really exciting about doing the research for this guide was having conversations with a number of different nonprofits, that are part of NYC Services Network. And they were really fun conversations, particularly having come from the corporate side myself, because I was basically asking nonprofits to sort of tell me, what they want to see from corporate partners, from the business sector. What are some of the things that they love, that they've really appreciated and, have made it really easy for them to work with, the business community in New York City? And what are some of the things that they've struggled with and some of the themes that they've seen and some of the things that, they'd like to be able to share. So, so I think that's just an important point to note is that, a lot of these, insights, come directly from, sort of our nonprofit community. So it's a little bit of a, the guide is I think it gives a little bit of insight into, what our nonprofit partners, really need from us. So I think we're, a small enough group here that before we jump in, just want to mention that, I think we can be really interactive. I think we're going to have an opportunity at the end to get into breakouts and talk a little bit, because I think that there's, clearly a wealth of knowledge right here on this call as well. So, would love for people to have the opportunity to share their own best practices from, being out in the community, working, with volunteerism and with partnerships. So we're going to have an opportunity to do that. But throughout the session, would really welcome you all to, pop questions into the chat. I think we can keep this pretty interactive. So if there's things that you want to talk more about, or even if you have a great, example of something that I'm talking about, feel free to kind of, pop it into the chat or raise your hand so we can hear from you. So to sort of give a quick outline of how this guide is organized, it's really kind of a thought process around how to approach kind of partnerships to have maximum impact. So we'll go through each of these sections as we go through, and the slides are sort of intentionally somewhat specific because you will be receiving a copy at the end, and I know it's nice to have kind of a quick summary. So I won't go through all of the text on all of these slides, but you will have them as a takeaway at the end. So you have a bit of detail and have some of those best practices sort of at your fingertips. So we start with aligning with company priorities. So when you're thinking about, embarking on volunteerism or thinking about, planning for the year ahead, thinking about the kinds of things that you want to engage in, one of the first things that we need to do is really understand sort of what we're looking to do as a company, what our motivations are. So we can move forward. So some of the things that we want to start by thinking about are really understanding our motivation as a company. There's so many different benefits. I think, we're probably all, don't need to be sold on those, but so many different company benefits for employee volunteerism, but really thinking about what are the ones that are most important to us? What are the ones that we really are prioritizing at our company? And are there some unique ones, that we're really looking to sort of accomplish, some unique goals that we might have? So really reflecting on that, because that might shift sort of what types of activities you want to engage in. Is it really about sort of, recruitment and retention? Is there a real need for sort of team building and networking? Is there a real opportunity for sort of skill development and leadership development? Thinking really about, what your motivations are going to help sort of drive the kinds of things that you select. You also, in doing that, want to sort of source internal perspectives, really talk to other stakeholders internally, and think about what are the other internal drivers that are going to influence what you're going to choose. What is my company vision and mission and values? Or if you're part of a corporate responsibility team or a foundation, what are those missions? What are those goals? Are there issue areas that we want to align with? Are there specific geographies that, that align really well with what we're trying to do as a company? What is our company culture? What do our employees want to see? Are there limitations they have? Are there skills that bring to the table? Are there, scheduling issues that are sort of across the board at our company, which are really going to sort of narrow what our choices are? Really important to talk to some of those internal stakeholders when we're thinking about that. So talking to maybe, our HR teams to hear what they're doing around leadership development and skill development, and if there's an interest in sort of partnering around volunteerism. Talking to our government affairs folks to understand, what communities are really key that we want to sort of focus on. And if you're not sitting in the foundation or the corporate responsibility team, talking to those teams to understand, are there issue areas that we're really interested in as a company that we should be looking to sort of focus in on? And are there other parameters, things that, sort of are opportunities, unique opportunities at our company, or, certain sort of limitations or challenges that we're going to need to work around? So just understanding sort of what all of that is when you're having that approach. And then knowing what you bring to the table, really, really important. We're obviously talking about volunteerism, so you have that sort of manpower that you're bringing to the table, but reflecting on what some of those other things are. Are there specific core competencies? Are there skills? Are there, technology that you could potentially bring to the table? One day when things sort of get back to normal, is there physical space, that you have access to, which can often be, really attractive to potential partners. So what are the different things that you bring to the table that you're thinking about? So just really reflecting on totally kind of, who we are, what we're looking for. So this is just kind of a snapshot of one of the exercises in the toolkit, kind of a self-reflection, questions to ask, to really reflect on and think about as you're kind of embarking on this. So you'll see when you get the guide, throughout the guide, there are a number of tools, to be able to really just be very tactical about it. So you'll see that it's not super dense and it's not, a lot of sort of, it's not too wordy, but there's, really key concepts. They're laid out for you. And then there's an opportunity with some tools to really be able to reflect, checklists to be able to ask yourself questions. The purpose is for it to be, really easy to use and, something that you can just action right away. So the next step is really understanding the issues facing your community, taking the time to, understand what's happening sort of in the world, in your community. And as Shilpa and Laura both brought up, really understanding where the areas are of greatest need. If the idea here, if the goal is to really maximize your company's impact in what you're doing, this is a really important step in the process. So sort of the biggest takeaway here is to really get informed, take some time to get informed, understand what the issues are. Last year in 2020, the issues, the biggest issues facing everyone were staring us all in the face. It was really, really, clear. We were all addressing, COVID. There was, sort of, all of the, racial equity work happening. Those were really big issues that were facing sort of our communities, facing the world. And, it gave a lot of focus to the work that people wanted to do in terms of volunteerism. Going forward, they may not be hitting us over the head kind of quite as clearly, and they may require a little bit more digging to kind of understand, especially now coming out of COVID, what are sort of the more nuanced issues that are facing some of our communities and neighborhoods? What are sort of, some of the things that are trailing, that are really impacting, organizations and communities around us? And then understanding the impact. Where do we have a unique opportunity to really sort of maximize our impact? What are the areas of greatest need in our communities? Who is most impacted? What are some of the issues that have bubbled to the surface? So really taking the time to kind of understand this. So some of the tactics to be able to do that, and obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but a starting point is, obviously NYC service, with an incredible network in the city and, a lot of resources to be able to really make those connections and be able to, help sort of surface where those needs are and what you might be able to do. Talking to your employees directly. Your employees are likely members of the communities that you're trying to, work in. Groups like ERGs that are digging in maybe more specifically into issue areas. Talking with those different sort of constituents internally. Talking to subject matter experts, particularly if there are certain issue areas that your company is really interested in. This is a great way to sort of really get educated and understand where the needs are, talking to subject matter experts. And this idea of reaching out to sort of trusted coalitions and umbrella organizations. If you're interested specifically in, a certain issue area, talking to sort of expert organizations in those spaces to understand sort of what are kind of the really current needs and specifically the unmet needs in those spaces. Where are you able to sort of target if you really want to maximize your impact? And then talking to community leaders. If you know there are certain communities that are high need or important specifically to your company, tapping sort of community leaders and stakeholders and having some of those conversations with them and actually trying to understand, where you can have sort of, that real impact. So once you've had a chance to sort of reflect on both of those things and really kind of, coming up to kind of a baseline of understanding what you bring to the table, what the needs are in your community, it's an opportunity to start really exploring potential partners to work with. You may have existing partners, but when there's an opportunity to sort of create a new partnership, thinking about what that looks like. So, understanding your priorities in a partner are really important. And some of that work that we just talked about in section 1, sort of understanding your own motivations, is really going to drive this. But being really candid, it's okay, as a company to say we have certain priorities. There are things that are important to us. We do want to maximize impact. We do want to make a difference in the community, but we also have some criteria internally. So knowing that and acknowledging that is important. It's going to sort of save time for your partner and allow you to be more targeted in what you're looking to do. So, this is an example of kind of one of the checklists in the guide, but it's, sort of a potential partner checklist, thinking about what you're looking for in a partner. And each of these tools is customizable. It's really a starting point to start thinking. So this tool in particular, we encourage you to sort of customize this. We encourage you to check off and highlight the ones that are most important to you. All of these might jump out as things that are important to your company, but the more you can hone in on sort of what you really want to prioritize will help you sort of, craft, a partnership that really is going to work for your company. So, do you really need subject matter experts in a specific issue? Is that what you're really going for? Or is there a specific community that you're targeting? Do you want people with experience with specific types of volunteer opportunities? If you're really interested in skills-based opportunities and your company has never done it before, you probably want to partner with an organization that's done it and has done it really well and can sort of help guide you through that. So thinking, sort of going through this and thinking about what your needs are in a partner and what you're looking for ideally, and adding to this list and just really reflecting on that when you're thinking about, who to partner with. So, after you've identified sort of some of those priorities, these are kind of some best practices to really think about how you can maximize impact and make sure you're targeting those areas of need. The first one is looking beyond the usual suspects. I think as corporations and, I, come from that space as well. I know that, there's a low tolerance for risk. It's really hard to sort of say, I'm going to go out and work with an organization that none of my colleagues have worked with before, that maybe is just starting out with, engaging with businesses with volunteering. It is definitely a risk. It's tough. But right now, I think over the past year, there's been an opportunity. There's been sort of a little cracking open of the door where I think corporations are realizing that, we do really want to have maximum impact. And maybe there's just a little bit more risk tolerance. I don't know if a lot of you are seeing that as well in your own companies, but I've been seeing, with folks that I'm working with, just more dialogue happening, more of these conversations. Let's push the envelope. Let's try something. Let's do something that might, sort of really have a huge impact. So, take advantage of that right now, because I know that this culture is really risk averse. But if there is a little window, if there is a little opening, think about working with a smaller community-based organization. The larger sort of very reputable organizations are doing incredible work. And, I think partnering with them is certainly a way to have great impact. But, you know, thinking beyond that a little bit and deciding if this is for you, if it's for you to think about working with smaller organizations for a number of different reasons. It, you know, it presents an opportunity to sort of meet some really urgent needs right on the front lines and really see kind of the direct impact of that work. But, you know, partnering with a corporation, you know, in any way can actually be a real game changer for a small community-based organization to be able to say that, you know, I'm partnering with X company. I now have the experience of working with, you know, a funder or a partner in that way. You know, it's bringing me visibility, it's bringing me credibility, it's, you know, sort of building my own confidence to be able to maybe reach out to other partners. So, you know, there's a number of different sort of motivations potentially for seeking out smaller organizations. So just reflecting on that, you know, asking yourself the question internally and seeing if there's an appetite for that. Definitely this idea of thinking about going outside your comfort zone, both literally and figuratively. You know, I think, you know, I was in this space, you know, 20 plus years ago, but I do remember I worked in Midtown Manhattan, and there was a school in Midtown Manhattan that it was like impossible to get into to volunteer with them because they were booked, you know, because every corporation in Midtown Manhattan wanted to work with them. So, you know, again, I think there's been a real evolution over the years, and there is, you know, much more of an appetite for sort of, you know, pushing the envelope, going outside kind of your immediate work neighborhood, you know, going to areas of need, but continuing to push that envelope internally and, you know, encouraging sort of employees and, you know, our internal stakeholders to say, you know, let's sort of really find what the right partnership is for us. Let's find where we can have the most, you know, impact. You know, starting potentially with, you know, these communities that NYC Service, you know, has identified as kind of, you know, really high need neighborhoods in New York City. Those are, you know, a potential great starting point. Areas that have been under-resourced even pre-COVID, and now since COVID have been hit really hard and, you know, could really use additional support and resources coming in there. And if you have national or global offices, you know, thinking about how to, you know, sort of go outside your comfort zone and still sort of have alignment across the board. So if you have a specific issue area that you really want all of your offices to focus on, maybe having that, but encouraging local, you know, offices to find partnerships, local partnerships that sort of fit the best within those broader guidelines, but also address kind of really local priorities. And then you sort of have the best of both worlds. And the other piece is sort of taking a chance, you know, being really open to working with communities and organizations that are not familiar to you. A great way to do that is starting with a smaller commitment. You know, it doesn't have to be we're signing a multi-year partnership with this organization and, you know, going to send hundreds of, you know, volunteers to them right away. It could be, let's try it out. You know, let's start with a small group and let's see how it goes. It'll give, you know, us a chance to get to know each other and understand if this partnership makes sense for us and we can expand it. And once you find a partnership that works, you know, sticking with them and exploring ways to expand and getting more deeply involved in their work, that can be really, you know, sort of provide a lot of satisfaction, both for employees and, you know, on sort of an organizing level, it can create a lot of efficiencies to sort of just really build on existing partnerships. And if you're working particularly with smaller organizations, it's always great to be able to recommend those organizations to other colleagues. It gives them, you know, an opportunity to have an introduction to other businesses, other companies, which can be really, really valuable. So just a couple of kind of takeaway tips, you know, think about the organization's capacity and their needs, you know, in addition to sort of thinking about our own priorities, you know, bring ideas to the table for discussion and exploration, you know, maybe not ones that are set in stone, but, you know, especially if you're working with a smaller organization that hasn't done this before, you know, driving it a little bit. Ensuring that, you know, the partnership has mutual value across the board and, you know, it's not creating just an added burden for smaller organizations, you know, for not sufficient results. I think we've all, you know, heard sort of that story of the small organization that's just very excited to work with a big name company and says yes, and, you know, just has them painting that wall that was already painted last week. I mean, I think that's, you know, that's everybody's worst case scenario. None of us want to be doing that. None of our employees want to be doing that. And no organizations want to be doing that. So just, you know, checking in with them to make sure that, you know, you're really meeting a critical need. And then being patient, particularly if you're working with smaller community organizations. Sometimes it may take a little more time to sort of navigate those partnerships, but, you know, the potential sort of, you know, payoff and rewards, you know, could certainly be worthwhile. So this idea of engaging thoughtfully, how do we engage sort of in these partnerships? As Laura mentioned, how do we partner in a way that kind of honors our communities and honors our partners? And I think we're all really striving to do that. And, there's nothing in here that you've never heard before, but, it's just a way to sort of think about it and lay it out, to think about how we want to approach sort of our work in the community and these potential partnerships. And this idea of how you engage with your partners is just as important as the outcomes of your partnership. We really are, trying to create relationships and work together, move away from this idea that, we're coming in to sort of help, but that we're really partnering to sort of have an impact in our community. So how you engage is really important. So, first, preparing yourself, taking the time to really understand your potential partner organization, doing some of that homework and understanding kind of who they are, what they focus on, how they operate, and inviting them sort of alongside that to educate you as well. Just sort of acknowledging that they are the experts, in their community, in their focus area, and, expressing sort of an eagerness to kind of learn and understand. So one of the tools in the guide is a first meeting checklist. When you're first talking to an organization, the kinds of things that you want to ask about and the kind of, candid communication that you want to model, by sharing information about yourself as well. So in those first meetings, you want to make sure you're asking a lot of questions, and you also make sure you also want to make sure you're sharing a lot of information. So here's kind of just, a high level taste. There's more, there's sort of, a larger checklist in the guide, but, the kinds of things that you want to talk about, you want to hear about their history. You want to hear dynamics in the community. You want to understand what has or hasn't worked for them before with, projects and volunteer, initiatives. The kinds of things you want to share. You want to share your core competencies and employee skill sets. You want to share what kind of resources you have available, in addition to sort of dollars and employees. You want to, be really upfront about sort of relevant criteria or specific requests or any limitations that you have. I see a question coming in from the chat. When will the guide be distributed? Shilpa's got that one. So, alongside this next is, listening with intention. So, when you're having these conversations, really listening. I mean, this is a really crucial one, sort of in any type of partnership, but particularly in, in a partnership that has some sort of inherent dynamics and sort of power dynamics. If you are a company working with, a nonprofit or even a small nonprofit, where there's money flowing in one direction, volunteers flowing in one direction, there's potentially sort of a balance issue there. So really trying to kind of correct that balance and encourage open and equal communication and, just making sure they feel comfortable talking to you and surfacing issues is really critical to sort of a successful partnership. So it might require you to ask some more of those questions and be really sort of, inviting them to kind of communicate candidly. So asking them what they need and how you might be able to support, how they like to work with partners to really understand if this is a good fit, and really listening to their perspective and also sharing yours. I think that the communication is really important, that it's flowing in both directions. So, a couple of kind of, sort of more tactical takeaways here, asking if the nonprofit has worked with other companies in the past and what's worked and what hasn't about those partnerships, inviting them to sort of share that with you. Always asking the partner what's best for them and not making assumptions, and inviting them to be really candid and open about both their expectations of a partnership and their reservations. So you can respond and really share your thoughts. Surfacing these things up front is really helpful and sort of, avoids kind of missteps, down the line and sets you up for success. So another big piece is leading with transparency, just, being really clear and setting the tone for kind of that kind of clear, transparent communication. Again, modeling this up front is really helpful because you're making it okay for them to sort of be really candid and transparent with you. So just some of the things to think about when you're in sort of, when you're sitting sort of at a company. your role and where you sit at the company. It sounds like a small thing, but, I've heard it many times from nonprofits that it can be really confusing, not understanding if someone sits in the foundation or in the corporate responsibility team, or if they're representing one specific team that's looking for kind of a one-off, team project. It's particularly challenging for organizations when they're dealing with multiple people from the same company and they're not sure exactly how to navigate that and who's representing what and are they all talking with each other. And I know that can be frustrating from your side as well, because I've been on that side where I find out that an organization is talking to multiple people at my company and feeling frustrated and feeling like, why didn't they let me know that? But, I think from where an organization sits, it's really hard to kind of understand all of the dynamics and what you're supposed to be surfacing, who's already connecting on the back end. So being really clear about things like what your role is, where you sit, who you're talking to, and, maybe even directly asking them, have you talked with anyone else from our company? Has anyone else reached out to you? If they do, I'm sort of the point person for these types of activities. So do you mind sharing that with me? Just asking that, really openly. Letting them know whether you're seeking sort of a one-off engagement or you're really looking to develop a long-term partnership. A lot of the times organizations invest a lot of time and effort in sort of preparing for these partnerships. And it's really helpful for them to know just sort of what you're looking for so they can adjust kind of how much they're investing sort of in that upfront sort of stage. Really sharing kind of your motivations, what are your priorities as a company, and being really clear about that. If your motivation for a specific project is, listen, for this particular project, we're going to have senior leaders present, and, our objective really here is for it to go off without a hitch, and we need something that's going to be easy and smooth and have some photo opportunities. That's okay to have some of those asks, but being really clear about that with an organization so they're aware of those things. And being really clear about what you can and can't commit to. And, I think setting expectations right up front to sort of being able to give and receive feedback is a really important part of transparency. If you set that up front, then it's not awkward to be able to say, hey, I have some feedback for you, if you have sort of a regular conversation set up for that very purpose. So thinking about some of the things that you can sort of set up to kind of, ensure transparency from the start. A really, really sort of important sort of piece of transparency is talking about money. This is always a really tricky thing to sort of talk about, both, for the nonprofit and sometimes for the company as well. You don't know when to introduce it, or, you want to wait and see kind of how things are developing. Do you want to do something big with them? Do you want to keep it small? Is there an opportunity to sort of have a larger relationship? You may not know that up front. So, just being really, transparent about that from the front, from the start, and just acknowledging that there is a cost to nonprofits to create and implement volunteer activities, even virtual projects. And, I think probably, all of us, in this conversation are aware of that, but sometimes the nonprofit's not aware that you're aware of that. So just putting that out there and saying, just right up front, as we're starting to talk about planning a project, I understand there's going to be a cost associated and we want to make sure that we're covering your costs. So, as we talk about this, please think about that so we can sort of have that as part of the conversation. That already puts an organization at ease. Like they're already talking about that. I don't need to sort of figure out when to insert that in the conversation. That's kind of already you're sort of like removing sort of a level of stress for an organization that you're working with just by kind of naming it and saying, yes, that's on the table, we'll discuss it. And just acknowledging that costs do go beyond just materials and supplies, that there is a lot of staff time dedicated to coordination and execution and reporting. So depending on kind of what your needs are, understanding that the cost is probably going to, correlate to that. And if the nonprofit, isn't flagging this for you and they're saying, we just need you to cover the costs of shovels and gloves and, we have the rest covered, maybe flagging this early on and just saying, are you sure about that? Because you want to make sure the nonprofit isn't overcommitting and that they're properly resourced to be able to deliver a great project for you. Sometimes, you want to sort of surface that right at the start to make sure that you are, being sort of a responsible partner and making sure that, the organization is sort of thinking about, the totality of the project and letting them know that you're willing to cover those expenses. So some of the keys to success sort of, around money specifically is just putting your cards on the table, being really open about how your company approaches budgets for volunteering and asking for sort of a candid account of how they approach budgets for that. And thinking about additional resources, beyond dollars and volunteering. What are the other things that you might be able to bring to the table? And if it's possible, if there's a partnership that you're really kind of looking to sort of deepen, thinking about whether there is an opportunity to make an unrestricted gift to your partner, beyond the cost of just the project to support and further their work, especially if it aligns with an issue area or is in a really hard hit community that your company is really interested in supporting. Thinking about, if there's that opportunity. So adapting and being flexible, remaining really open and flexible, sets you up again for a strong partnership. Making sure that you're exploring your partner's needs and ideas as well. Framing asks as requests and making sure that what you're asking is realistic for your organization. And being prepared to have some of your requests declined, just sort of setting yourself up for that and letting your partner know that it's okay. Like, be honest with me. If this is too much of a stretch, this is a big ask. Let me know if this is realistic. And just knowing that there's going to be unforeseen challenges that arise and, being prepared to be flexible about that. So, a few sort of takeaways here, no means no. If your organization is, seems hesitant and has said no, it's probably best not to push a certain idea or, type of project. Explore what their concerns are and see if there's a way for you to address some of those concerns to make it work for them. But if it seems like it's not going to work, it's probably not going to be in your best interest either, to push. Starting early is really critical, particularly with smaller organizations, allowing a lot of time for planning and building in time for sort of those unexpected, unforeseen challenges. And accommodating your partner. Sometimes nonprofits are stretched for capacity and may not be able to sort of do exactly what you need on the timeline that you need it. But if the partner seems like a great fit and it seems like you could really have an impact as part of that partnership, figuring out ways to sort of work with them and, have that flexibility. Is there a way to adjust your timeline? Is there a way to sort of start with that pilot and, then sort of grow to something larger? What are some of the things you can think about to making a partnership work? And then, of course, fostering collaboration through open communication. I think, a lot of the things sort of in here relate back to communication. But, building that mutual trust and respect, is really going to help sort of overall the amount of impact that you're able to have. So setting the tone, up front that, this partnership is a partnership and, both parties are going to experience benefits from it, that it's not just, we are helping you, and as part of that, creating sort of a framework for shared decision making, making sure that you are creating opportunities to hear their viewpoints and make decisions together that are going to work the best for kind of the mission that you're trying to accomplish. Documenting the partnership is always useful. Doesn't have to be, something really dense, but, just outlining sort of the basic terms of the agreement, so you both know sort of the expectations are really clear and that there's no misunderstandings, that, the things that are really important are put in there and both organizations have agreed and said that they understand, what you're trying to do and how you're planning to do it. And this one's really important, just setting sort of a cadence for staying connected. It's hard to pick up the phone out of the blue and call a partner and say, there's been an issue or there's a struggle or there's something we're not happy with. It's a lot easier if you're having regular conversations or there's a regularly established check-in, with consolidated points of contact. If there's multiple people working on your side, multiple people working on their side, have sort of designated points of contact that are going to talk about certain things. To make sure that you keep the partnership on track and, invite them during that conversation to say, how are things going? Everybody should be able to weigh in during those conversations to say, how are things going? What's working? What could we be doing better? So setting that cadence up front, just kind of already creates that opportunity to sort of have those candid conversations. So again, some kind of key takeaways here, being proactive, not waiting for sort of a misunderstanding to occur, checking in with your partner regularly, modeling open communication, being really candid and honest and inviting your partner's feedback. And this is a big one, reading signals. You know, if your partner seems hesitant or doubtful about anything, checking in just to make sure that you really understand their concerns. And on the flip side, if you're feeling hesitant or, you know, that you feel like you're not 100% ready for, you know, a certain project or a certain initiative, you know, share that with them and figure out, work together to sort of figure out how to solve that. So striving for diversity, equity, and inclusion in partnerships. Laura talked about this too, you know, looking at everything sort of with a racial equity lens and with a DEI lens. You know, there's some sort of, you know, a few points here that are certainly not comprehensive, but I know that NYC Service, you know, hosted a really wonderful session a few months ago, specifically on this and how sort of, you know, corporate partners could, you know, approach volunteerism with a DEI lens. So Shilpa, I don't know if you want to quickly sort of give a plug on that, but I think a recording is available on that. And some of this information from that session will be incorporated into this guide, but definitely encourage you to sort of, you know, to go deeper into this piece of it, to look at that previous session.
Yeah, the recording is available on our YouTube page at NYC Service, and I'll send the link out with the follow-up information from this session as well. But definitely, if you're interested in learning more about any of these, there'll be more info in the guide when it comes out, but certainly check that out as it's a great resource to kind of get more in depth on those topics, as there's a lot to talk about just within those as well.
Absolutely. Both in terms of, you know, how we're approaching it internally, you know, within our organizations and how we're approaching it, you know, as a partner, and making sure that we're, you know, being sort of the partners we want to be, like out in the community. So, yes. So evaluating and evolving a partnership. Another really critical piece of sort of maximizing impact and setting a partnership up for longer term success. So building in sort of that evaluation early, building it in right up front. It's so much easier to sort of bake in evaluation at the start of something than try to sort of retrofit it after it's already started. So if you do have the benefit of embarking on something new, a new project, a new partnership with an organization, a new initiative, really important to sort of, you know, make a plan early on to sort of measure the impact and understand, you know, the impact on two fronts. You know, what was the impact of the initiative sort of on the community, on the mission, you know, that we were trying to align with, and also, you know, how effective it was for us internally, for our employees in terms of our goals that we set up front. You know, did it sort of, you know, engage our employees? Did it sort of accomplish, you know, the team building and the networking we were looking for? So making sure that you have sort of a, you know, an evaluation plan for both of those things. Creating ongoing opportunities for your partner and your volunteers to surface issues and challenges and concerns. So making sure you have sort of those feedback loops set. You know, is it a survey after each project, you know, to volunteers? Is it, you know, focus groups occasionally with volunteers to hear about their experiences? You know, hopefully you've got that, you know, regular conversations set up with your nonprofit partner to surface what those issues are. Are there others that they want to sort of bring in for sort of points of view at regular intervals? Do they want to, you know, survey their clients? Do they want to survey, you know, their community about how this initiative is going, depending on sort of the depth of the relationship and, you know, whether it's kind of a short-term project, a long-term project, really scaling what evaluation is going to look like. And aligning on a cadence for reporting and the kind of information that you want to receive from your partner. This is really, really important. Giving them sort of, you know, a heads up, you know, early on to say, we're going to need, you know, sort of, you know, a quarterly sort of update on how things are going. And these are exactly the kinds of information we're going to need. So collect it up front, you know, let us know what's realistic. Let us know if you need dollars built into this partnership to be able to collect this kind of information, and be prepared to share it with us on this schedule. I know sometimes, you know, we don't always have that luxury either, that we're getting asked for things on the fly by senior leaders, things that were unexpected or just nuanced things that we didn't know about. But as much as possible, giving your partner notice on sort of the kind of reporting that you want, exactly what you're going to want in there, you know, and talking about how they're going to do that, you know, just really understanding that. So you know that when you get that reporting, it's going to be what you need. You don't want surprises on your end either. If you think you're getting sort of a long-term impact, you know, of a certain initiative, you want to really kind of get in there. That's important. You want to make sure you know how the partner's doing that and, you know, what their approach is going to be to make sure it aligns with what you're looking for. And just together determining how you're going to measure the success of your partnership and these volunteer activities. And then being selective about what to measure. This one's really important, sort of just a measurement best practice, but you want to make sure that you're thinking about the kinds of questions that you want to answer and the kind of outcomes that you want to evaluate. You never want to be, taking on too much. If you send a survey to somebody that has 50 questions, 2 people will answer it. But if you send, a survey with 2 questions, 50 people will answer it. So really being selective about what you actually need and what you actually want to know and what you want to tackle, because measurement is a big one for you to do internally and for your partner to do sort of on a program level. It's a big undertaking, and you want to make sure that there's, you're being really targeted about what you're going to need and what you're going to use. And have a combination of quantitative and qualitative data. So you have both sort of the hard data points as well as those stories. Together they can sort of really create, a picture of impact. So you want to make sure that you're getting some of both of that. And prioritizing which metrics are important to both parties and determining sort of what the best measures are. And this is the most important piece, I think, of the evaluation piece, is the reflection. The data without the reflection is just kind of data sitting in a vacuum. So making sure that you're really building in that evaluation piece. How do we reflect on this? How do we sort of see what the trends are in the data? How do we think about what can be improved? If we don't have those conversations built in with our partner and also built in sort of internally, then it's really hard to use that data to make things better. So again, calendaring regular conversations with sort of key stakeholders, whether, both internally and externally, and reflection sessions with your partner organization to really discuss and think about how to evolve a partnership. Again, there are so many benefits of sort of a longer term partnership for both, the community partner as well as all of you. So, these are things to really be able to set up, a long-term partnership that, is going to work and be really successful. So this is just kind of just highlighting that there is an appendix in the guide because, as you see, the guide is really focused on kind of this approach. How do you really think about partnership? How do you sort of show up in your community? How do you make sure that, the partnerships are win-win and really respectful of kind of the communities and the partners that you're working with? But there's also an understanding that the audience for this, is going to be a range. It's going to be, some of you that have really sort of fully developed, volunteer programs and, have a lot of those pieces in place. But we also really want it to speak to, smaller companies that are just starting out with this, work, that are maybe just dipping a toe for the first time into sort of, employee volunteerism. So there are some of these additional tools in here. It's just a quick overview of them. There's kind of just a section around kind of volunteer programs 101. There's, a little bit of an overview of the different types of volunteer activities, short-term, long-term, skills-based, virtual, and the pros and cons of each and, why they might be a fit for different companies. Some best practices on skills-based volunteering, which we're going to have, one of NYC Services partners be weighing in on. Best practices for sort of just engaging employees. How do we get employees to pay attention and get excited about volunteerism? And best practices for virtual volunteer activities, which many of you probably have already sort of figured out over the past year, but, great to sort of have some of that laid out. And then best practices for your volunteer activity, preparing your employees, how to actually sort of continue that thoughtful partnership and engagement on the day of. And then overall setting volunteers up for success. How do we make sure that we're fostering internally a culture that supports volunteerism? How can we sort of, have a company culture that supports, encourages, and, motivates volunteers? And what kinds of supports might we put in place for volunteer initiatives? So things like matching gift programs, Dollars for Doers programs, what are sort of some of those basic supports you can put in place that help build that culture, but also help really support, employees that are volunteering in their communities. So you'll see some of those more tactical sort of tools in here as well to sort of, address you no matter where you are on your sort of, program journey. So that was a lot of talking. Really eager with some of the time that we have to hear from all of you. I think that, a number of you are running, employee volunteer programs and have probably done incredible work, particularly over the past year and a half. And, this is not an exhaustive list of best practices. So really would love to hear from all of you. So the plan is we're going to put you each into breakout groups, and would love, just as your prompts, for you to think about sort of a memorable success, in managing volunteers, and a real challenge in sort of, volunteer engagement. And out of those, what were some of the lessons learned? What are some of the best practices that, that you could contribute to sort of this, this thinking as well? So within your own group, if you could compile sort of a short list of best practices and pick sort of the best one that hasn't been shared yet, as part of the guide. So we can really all benefit from kind of the wealth of your experience here. So excited to hear from all of you and give you all a chance to sort of chat with each other a little bit about some of your experiences and best practices around volunteer engagement and maximizing impact. So I think Shilpa is going to send us all into breakout groups.
Yes, I am just finishing setting them up right now. And yeah.
Hi, it's Leslie. So sorry. I have to leave for 10:30. The chat wasn't working for some reason, but this is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I'll let Shilpa know, Leslie.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. We had a good conversation in our group. I'll just quickly sort of share one best practice. Or Eric, do you want to share a best practice that came out of our group?
Sure, happy to share the best practice. And I think I'll probably butcher it, but my name is Eric Williams. I'm with Credit Suisse, and our group, which included Braxton from Sony and Fran from CAA, Creative Arts Agencies. One of our suggestions was we found that virtual events tend to give people even more opportunity to have something come up and miss the event. So AKA flaky. So one of the things that we've done is to try and mitigate that. Our best practice is to oversubscribe. As in addition to that, to remind the volunteers that someone is on the other end and expecting this and counting on them. The charity's counting on them. Braxton mentioned how mentoring is very popular at Sony right now, and so that connection and just reaffirming and reminding employees that someone is counting on them. And so in combination with that and oversubscribing and possibly numerous reminders, you can try to mitigate that issue sometimes. So that was one of the best practices that we discussed on our team in our breakout.
Thanks, Eric.
Sure.
Would love to hear sort of a top best practice that came out of any of the other breakout sessions. How many breakouts did we end up with, Shilpa?
3 rooms. So we don't have a ton of time. So probably we'll have to wrap up in a little bit, but yeah, I guess if each room can share one.
So we were breakout 1. If breakout room 2 can share one top best practice that came out. Anyone from breakout room 2? Oh,
I think we were breakout room 2, if I recall. I think we talked a lot about really prioritizing the employees and their wants and needs as well, and seeing what types of opportunities that the company wants to prioritize. Like Braxton said, like they're prioritizing mentoring and those issue areas that are the most meaningful to the employees as well, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are the doing the service. So I think that is also something to note.
Great, thank you. How about breakout room 3? Do we have a best practice that you guys want to share?
I think that was
Oh, go ahead, dear. Go for it.
No, I mean, Pam and Shilpa, we talked a lot about providing transportation for the volunteers and getting them out to areas that otherwise they may not go to. But yeah, I mean, Pam, if you want to elaborate on that, I think that was a really good one.
Yeah, it's just, kind of the communities that need the most may not be right outside of your office. And so sometimes you do have to get people to where the need is. So bus transportation, lunch, those are the things that we kind of have done in order to entice people to go to places that, like you said, they just wouldn't go.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely helping to facilitate that and making it easy for them to be able to get out there. That's a great one. Great. Well, thank you all so much. I hope you all had good discussions and came up with some other good ideas in the breakouts. But it was really nice being with all of you this morning, and very excited to sort of get this guide, officially out there. But it was really such a pleasure to be able to kind of just give you an overview of all of it. Really nice to be with everyone. And thank you so much, Laura and Shilpa, for having me.
Of course. I see a hand raised from Eric. Did you have a quick question?
Oh yeah, I forgot to throw one more thing out there. Fran on our team also mentioned another good practice is to have someone else, maybe a senior voice on the team that's going out to volunteer, so that people aren't constantly hearing from us. So just wanted to give that best practice too. So sorry about that, but thank you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Good one.
So since we're moving short on time, if folks have questions, if anyone has a dying question, let me know. If not, definitely we can forward questions. If you throw them in the chat, we can circulate some answers afterwards. But I know we have a few other updates to get to, but does anyone have any questions they just really want to get off their chest before we go? We might have time for one or two, but. Okay, well, thank you again, Amita, for presenting all of this information. As I mentioned in the chat, I think we're looking to get this guide out in the fall, hopefully in September or early October. So yeah, so keep an eye out for that. And definitely if you have any questions or comments on the stuff you saw today, please feel free to email me or email Amita. Her email address is here. And yeah, we'd be happy to hear what you guys have thought of all of this. And yeah. So moving forward, sorry, I will open up our other PowerPoint for a moment and share some NYC service updates real quick. Here we go. So real quick, Good For Me, Good For My City campaign this year. As many of you know, NYC Service, this is our annual campaign that really unites businesses to volunteer, to pledge volunteers, and really showcase different areas of need for the city. We've done mentoring as a focus area, and then this year last year, I suppose, for the 2020 campaign, we had focused on pro bono volunteering. Well, we're continuing focusing some of our efforts on pro bono volunteering, and I'll talk about our partnership in a little bit in the program that we've been running. The campaign, we've had a little bit of a gap in capacity over at our office, so we haven't been able to start the 2021 campaign, and thinking about it and, you know, making some strategic decisions, we've decided to pause the campaign for this year, so folks won't get official pledge forms. As we're coming to the end of the administration, we're planning to resume again in 2020 in January to get back to like our calendar year focus. But in the coming months, we really wanted to continue to showcase all of the amazing work that the Good For Me, Good For My City partners have done over the past 3 years. We've had so many partners, many of you on the call, who've just done incredible work. And I think the more that we can do to showcase and highlight those stories is another way to get more businesses in New York involved in that work. So I know a lot of you shared your stories through the Mayoral Service Recognition Awards this year, and thank you for that. We're going to be using some of those stories to put together some social, and so we'll be reaching out to folks about that. But also, if you have other stories that you want to share, or if you've been a campaign member and want to talk about something that you've done through the campaign, we'd love to hear from you. So just let us know. But for now, the official campaign will resume in January 2022, and you'll see updates coming up about that in the fall and late fall, early December time. But for the meantime, we will we are excited to highlight folks. And I think moving forward, that's really where we're looking to continue the campaign, is being a platform on social media, on any outlets that we can find, really to continue promoting the wonderful work of our partners in engaging volunteers. And then a few other updates. So some of you know about our Volunteers for Small Business Recovery program that we've launched in partnership with Common Impact and Small Business Services. So we've extended the program out until July. The program is a pro bono skills hotline where we match skilled-based volunteers from from some of our corporate partners who've signed up already with small businesses in the community who've expressed need. They have a 1-hour phone call where they get some advice, technical assistance, support in a particularly sticky situation or challenge they might be having. And the program's been going well, although we've had some hiccups because it is the pilot in terms of the small business outreach being a little slow at first. We've made about 20 matches through the program with volunteers and small businesses, but definitely are continuing to work with small business services as well as NYC EDC to improve our small business outreach and really kind of get more small businesses to know about the program. So if you guys have any other networks that you think might be interested in terms of sharing this with small businesses, we've kind of opened up our recruitment for the small businesses who can submit questions. So please feel free to share out this information, and you can email me and I'm happy to send some materials for you to send out if you do have contacts, but we would love that. And then I will pass it over to Cora, who can talk briefly about our upcoming mentoring event, as well as kind of give you the closeout for the year. Cora has been our amazing mentoring and in-kind Vista this year and has been working on a lot of projects. So many of you have talked with her. Her last day in service with NYC Service is actually the beginning of August, so August 2nd. And yeah, we've been so grateful to have her here. She's done so much. And so I just wanted to pass the floor over to her to talk a little bit about her accomplishments for this year, and then also about the upcoming mentoring event.
Yeah, thank you, Shilpa. I'll be brief with everything. So we do have an opportunity on 22nd, which is next Thursday, with our Youth Leadership Council at NYC Service. It's a mentoring event, a one-time mentoring event, where we will be having mentors just talk with the youth from these councils more about specifically personal branding and how to network and practicing elevator pitches. So we are looking for a few more mentors to join us. So if you are interested and would like to learn more about the event, feel free to email me, which is noted in the slide, and Shilpa will include that in the follow-up email as well, if that is of interest. And so just a brief summary for what I have been working on this year. Like Shilpa mentioned, I will be leaving NYC Service and my AmeriCorps position August 2nd, and will be going to law school in the fall. So it is coming to a close very quickly. And like many of the people on this call, I worked on Secret Snowflake with you, and that was a big success this year. We had 6 city agencies, almost over 1,400 letters completed, with 26 business partners and an estimated in-kind value of almost $20,000, which is really great to see, especially during the pandemic. It was a challenge. We thought that people would not be as engaged, but it ended up people were more engaged as ever. And that was great to see in the city. And then I worked on NYC STEP, a mentorship program where we had different DYCD providers, the Department of Youth and Community Development, working with 3 businesses. And we actually garnered 44 mentors with 81 mentees. And that was also a success. And we transitioned this to virtual as well. So Braxton, Sony was a partner. So we hope that was a success for your employees. And then we just actually completed Project Move-In, where we partnered with DHS and their Future Leaders program for youth who have at one point experienced homelessness and have been accepted into college and will be attending in the fall. So we were collecting items and donations for those students to prepare for college. So getting, comforters, pillows, all those necessities. And with the partners, we had 3 of them and collected almost 400 items with an estimated value of almost $9,000. So we hope that was an enjoyable event, and thank you for everybody who's joined us for that. And like I just mentioned, we are completing speed mentoring events. So we just completed one yesterday. or 2 days ago, sorry, time flies. And that was a success. So we are hoping to have even more mentors and mentees for the following event that is open for next week. And just real quick, I think for the lessons that I've learned this year is the value and power of programming, especially with partners around the city. I moved to New York this almost exactly a year ago from DC after graduating college. And it's so great to see the partnership of all the different sectors of the city. So from the corporate world to city agencies to the city government, and how binded and collaborative the entire city can be. And that goes into my next point of sustainable partnership. I know for at least for Secret Snowflake, some people have been a partner for 6-7 years and continue to give as much as they can. And I hope that that can continue for many years to come, because it truly does go to populations that need it the most. And of course, like most of you have experienced, the transition to remote work has been definitely a challenge, but I think after a year, we've excelled in being able to have these types of programs and accessibility to people and continue the programming and helping the people that need it most. And again, I can't stress enough the community that I've been surrounded, especially with NYC Service and the leadership that it has with Shilpa and Laura and everybody else in the office. So I thank you all for this incredible year. I truly won't forget it. And I'll pass it back to Shilpa for just some final updates. Oh, Shilpa, you're muted.
Thank you. And thank you, Cora, for all your work. Real quick, and then I'm going to pass it off. So our next NYC Corporate Volunteer Council, our next meeting will be in September or October. And with this follow-up email, I'm going to be sending a quick feedback survey. The city has a go-ahead to do some in-person meetings in the fall, and just really wanted to check where you all are at and like what you're thinking about next steps in terms of virtual versus in-person. So if you could fill out that quick survey just to get your thoughts on what you'd like to see next, that would be really helpful for us as we're planning. And then 2 new members will be joining our team in August. One Vista member who will be working on mentoring and in-kind work and picking up where Cora left off for the coming year, and then a new coordinator who will be sort of helping spearhead more of our other campaigns. And then I think I mentioned this very briefly in regards to William's question earlier, but in terms of overall NYC Service Public-Private Partnership team updates, we're really looking to kind of overhaul how we're doing our work. In the past, we've done very direct connections with nonprofits and trying to really be a support center for more specific questions that businesses might have about, like, where do I go for this project, or what can I do for that project? I think we're trying to really help businesses be able to figure out a way to internally navigate those dialogue and conversations with their best interests in mind, because it's such a personal choice on how each of us is going to go about doing our work. And so with that, we've been thinking about our service project interest form that we had on board, and our also our corporate volunteer lookbook. And we're expecting some changes. I think we'll still be obviously helping to provide connections to the community. We're just rethinking how we're going to do that in terms of our new approach. So definitely look out for that in the coming months. But yeah. And with that, last but not least, I will pass it over to Fran Glassberg from the Creative Arts Agency Foundation to talk a little bit more about and share their Ready Set initiative. So Fran, if you want to speak real quick.
So, yeah, I'll be very, very quick. And if there's any follow-up, I'm happy to connect with any of you. But as Shilpa mentioned, my name is Fran Glazenberg. I'm an executive at CAA in our foundation group. And I'm here to talk to you about this new initiative that we launched called Ready Set. So Ready Set is an outcome that's really stemming on how do we help this lost education during the pandemic. You know, kids have experienced a tremendous loss. A recent study came out of Stanford University saying that they're experienced about a third of a full year loss in English and even higher for math. So to address this concern, CAA decided, you know, what could we do best? So we brought together our influence as well as our networks to create a coalition, which is what Ready Set is. So Ready Set is a national tutor, mentoring, and service recruitment campaign, which is designed to meet the needs of American students who have suffered a learning loss this year. So our founding partners, which is, you know, who we initially launched this with, are Volunteer Match, Mentor.org, and AmeriCorps. So we all came together, which was really, you know, again, CA bringing all these partners together and, you know, them, you know, using what they already have, but doing it together. So, you know, we created a website called getreadyset.org where you can sign up and you can either choose to become a mentor, a volunteer, or to help serve. So this campaign launched on June 2nd. It will run throughout September. We've had support from Van Jones, Ariana Huffington, Arnie Duncan to really help push this out, and, you know, continuing this month and August to use a lot of CA talent, you know, celebrities, athletes to help push this out. So the reason, you know, we wanted to bring it to you is, you know, we would love to get your companies involved, you know, to help with, you know, either recruitment, help your employees, you know, sign up to, you know, be a volunteer or service member, to, you know, help promote it. We can share our materials with you, and, you know, you can share it within your companies as well as your networks. Also to help amplify the message. So, you know, any of your personal or corporate social media platforms, you know, really help push this out. So yeah, that was, you know, very, very quick. Shilpa will be, I think, you know, Shilpa, you said you'll be sending out our deck to the group. So that'll, you know, have much more information on there. And again, if, you know, you have any questions or, you know, want to get involved, feel free to reach out to me. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Fran. And yes, we will be sending out a lot more information in terms of the deck and how to get involved in our follow-up email. And I'll also send the contact from CAA, so you can reach out if you have any other questions. And right on time, we've finished. So thank you all for joining us. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions following the meeting. As always, we'll send out links and recordings as well as the slides from today. But yeah, thank you all again. Appreciate your time and participation.
Thanks, Shilpa and everybody.